What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Flex Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Raybon of the Action Network, and this is our rookie quarterback fantasy preview episode for 2023. We're going to draft our top 8 rookie QBs by ADP value for this year, and that's essentially drafting the top 8 rookie quarterbacks. To do it with me is one of the top fantasy rankers in the game, the odds maker, Sean Kerner. Sean, what is going on? How was your Hall of Fame game?
Hall of Fame game was great. I actually hit my first bet, the Jets first half. But then, regrettably, in game, I took the over 37.5, and it just missed by a half point. That late non-PI call was infuriating. I also thought that they would play Strevler a little bit more. They played Tim Boyle for like the entire second quarter, the entire third quarter. So that was a bummer. That was my whole plan, was to fade him. And I ended up needing him to do things, which didn't turn out well. How about you?
Yeah, I just had one bet. It was the over, and so I hit. That's not a usual thing for me, betting overs in the preseason. But yeah, I thought the Jets quarterbacks would actually do more, but it turned out our boy Dorian Thompson Robinson kind of saved us with a bunch of just baller ass plays. But we'll talk about him probably on this pod because we're gonna draft. Yep. So we'll draft 8 rookie quarterbacks, and we'll kind of do it the way we did for our running back and receiver episodes, which are out now. We'll go back and forth, so no snake draft. You want to go first for this one, or you want to go first for our tight end pod?
You can go first on this one.
Okay, so let's jump right in here. Number 1 quarterback who's going to beat their ADP. I got to go Bryce Young at QB 24 here because Anthony Richardson's the QB 13, and we're using Best Ball 10 ADP over the last 2 weeks. Anthony Richardson's the QB 13, but there's just less way to go up, and I think Young may actually start a couple extra games over Richardson. So I got to go Young here. I thought he was the best quarterback in terms of throwing, the best passer in the draft. Obviously, so did the Carolina Panthers. I don't love the receiving core, but they have enough guys that I think they could cobble something together with Thielen, Mingo, the rookie, Chark going deep. You still have Marshall, who broke out somewhat last year, and Chenault as well. So you have enough guys, Hayden Hurst at tight end, to kind of get him through here. I think the O-line will be solid. So, Young for me at QB 24, if he exceeds expectations, I think efficiency wise, he could break into the top 20, maybe even into the, mid-teens. Whereas Richardson, I think you really are looking at him probably to go to QB 8, 7, 8, that's probably his ceiling. So I think in terms of this draft, I'm going to have to go Young here, even though I love the upside of Richardson more than any other quarterback in this draft. I think in terms of ADP value, Young is going to be my choice.
Yeah, I don't know why I let you go first there. I would have taken Bryce Young. He's compared to Kyler Murray just based on his size, but he doesn't rush as much as Kyler. Certainly he's going to, scramble a bit, but he's more of a pocket passer than people realize, and he's really polished. I think he's going to be really good as a rookie. If anything, he's going to be sort of like in between a Kyler Murray and a Russell Wilson type, where, he has rushing upside, but he has a strong arm. Like, he's a legit passer. So I would have taken him here first. I let you get him. And this morning, Anthony Richardson was QB 14. So I was going off of that. QB 13 is a little bit rich, but I'm going to have to go with Anthony Richardson for my first pick, just because I think there is room to grow a bit more. And his ADP is going up because it does look like he has the inside track for the week 1 job. I think that's key. If you're taking him at QB 13, he definitely has to start within the first couple of games, and it looks like that's what's going to happen. And while he's definitely raw as a passer, he has some of the best rushing upside I've seen heading into his rookie season. So he's probably just going to lean on that even more, kind of like Justin Fields did last season. So I think we got to treat Richardson kind of like Jalen Hurts when he was first starting out, like massive rushing upside. Maybe the passing numbers won't be there, but in fantasy football, that doesn't matter. So he has a ton of upside. I think once it's like official, if it's becomes official that he's starting week 1, I think his ADP might jump up to like QB 11, somewhere in that range. So I think it can only go up. But like you said, his ceiling probably is maybe like QB 7 or so. But either way, compared to the other quarterbacks, he has a clear path to getting there. So that's why he's going to be my first pick.
How many rushing attempts per game you have him projected for, roughly?
Just off the top of my head, I would say like around 8 or so. I mean, it could be more, could be less, but I think 8 is right about where I'm thinking. What about you?
Yeah, I think I'm a little closer to 9.
Yeah.
Just kind of looking at his scramble rate in college, and I do think he'll get 5 to 6 design runs per game. That's kind of where Hurts and Fields and those guys have kind of been early on in their careers. So yeah, little over 8, closer to 9. But yeah, I think that's really going to be a strength because I've said this before. I think the likelihood, I think Hurts started a little better throwing the ball as a rookie than a guy like Justin Fields. And I think Richardson will probably be closer to Fields in terms of how the passing numbers look. Like I have his completion rate around 58% in year 1. That's something that, he struggled with, and he's probably going to go down the field. So you are going to see, I think, some inconsistency throwing the ball, but that also gives you the chance for some big plays. So, a lot to like with Richardson, especially if he starts week 1. Then I think he's a slam dunk, and he has you would take Richardson over Daniel Jones, would you say, if he started week 1, or how would you have those two guys?
Yeah, they're close. I would go Richardson. And yeah, it looks like I do have him around like 9.1 rush attempts per game.
Yep.
Yeah, he's similar to Daniel Jones, but with a couple more rush attempts per game. So I just like the upside. And this is the range where you kind of want to go for upside if you're in a 1 QB league anyway. So yeah, I would definitely take Richardson over Daniel Jones right now.
And do you think the potential of Jonathan Taylor not playing for the Colts this year would help or hurt Richardson's raw numbers? Like obviously from a development standpoint, you'd probably like to have that guy in the backfield that's, commanding attention. But do you think, like, if they don't have Taylor, do they throw the ball more even with Richardson, or how do you think that would potentially shake out?
It's interesting. It go either way, right? I think I would prefer to have Jonathan Taylor there just so that it keeps the defense honest. Like, having a Zach Moss is completely different situation. So I think having Taylor would help, but yeah, maybe if Taylor's not there, they're more likely to play Richardson more and let him run. I don't know. Do you have any angle on that? Because I could go either way on that.
I think it actually might help with the volume. I don't know if it'll help with the efficiency, but I think with Richardson, I am worried about the pass volume a little bit. So I might be willing to trade that because, if you just have Moss and Hull and Deion Jackson and who they just signed, Kenyon Drake, I don't know how you run the ball, 25, 27 times, 30 times a game with those guys. But if you have Taylor, he could average 20 carries a game for them. So yeah. I think for the sake of fantasy, I'd probably slightly prefer if Taylor wasn't there, but it'll probably be a smoother year for Richardson if Taylor is lining up in that backfield come week 1. All right. So Bryce Young, Richardson, the other two quarterbacks, by the way, that are getting drafted with ADPs are CJ Stroud at QB 26 and Will Levis at QB 34. And then we'll use QB 42 for all of the other quarterbacks that don't have an ADP over the last 2 weeks. So with my third pick, this is interesting. So this is going to come down, I think, for me to Stroud versus Levis. I'm going to go Stroud because I've been saying that I'm not sold on the fact that Levis is going to take over for Tannehill. I'm not sold on the fact that they have any intention to do that. I just think this was more of a kind of an injury protection because last year you saw what happened once Tannehill went down. They were a 500 team, give or take, with Tannehill, and that was with a ton of other injuries and whatnot. But without Tannehill, I believe they didn't win a game. Malik Willis could not throw the football. Josh Dobbs was signed off the street. So even though you are getting a little better of a value from ADP with Levis going outside the top 30, I think Stroud, it's kind of like Bryce Young. Like I think Stroud should start from week 1, most likely, and he has a chance at least to be a little more efficient than maybe we think. I don't think this Houston team is trying to tank this year. I think they're going to be a little more competitive since they have all of those picks tied up in Arizona next year. But Stroud, the thing about him is, it's really going to come down to, can he develop chemistry with this wide receiving core, which we also really haven't seen together. I mean, it's an all new receiving core except for Nico Collins, really, with Robert Woods, Mechie, Tank Dell, Noah Brown is there, Dalton Schultz is there. So there are definitely some concerns with Stroud, I think, compared to Young, especially since Young is a better passer. But if I'm comparing Stroud to a guy like Will Levis, I still think Stroud just has more upside of starting games. Like Will Levis may not start any games if Tannehill stays healthy. So I still got to go with Stroud. It's somewhat close here, but I still like a lot of things I saw with Stroud. Justin Fields kind of giving us some hope with these Ohio State quarterbacks recently. So not expecting as big of things from Stroud as Young, but still going to take him as my second pick and third overall here.
Yeah, no, I think that was a no-brainer call. I think Stroud obviously going to start right away. I think he has NFL-ready accuracy. I think his accuracy is his main asset, which is huge because he's more of a pocket passer than the other two quarterbacks we talked about. So he's going to have to hit the ground running. He might have some bumps along the way, but yeah, like he's the last quarterback on this list that we can project safely for 12 or more starts. So I would have taken Stroud there. It's wide open after him, and I don't like Will Levis at QB 34, but I'm gonna have to take him just because there is the belief that he might make some starts over the last few weeks of the season. I'm not one of those people either. I'm with you. I think Ryan Tannehill will start as long as he's healthy and as long as the Titans have a chance of making the playoffs. So there's a very real chance Levis won't start games this year. But out of all these other quarterbacks, he does have at least a path to make starts towards the end of the season if, the Titans are out of the playoff hunt. And having, DeAndre Hopkins there is huge. So if Levis does take over, at least he has, a talented pass catcher in him. He has Chig, of course, Treylon Burks. So he has the most upside of the rest of these guys, but I don't expect them to really start more than a handful of games, if that. So after him, though, it's really slim pickings. You can't really project any of these guys to start more than one game, if that. So I'm just gonna have to go with Levis just because I'm projecting him for about 2 starts or so. But yeah, QB 34, that's what you get in that range. You're not taking guys that are like guaranteed starts.
And what's your general opinion of Levis and what he did at Kentucky? Because I personally wasn't very impressed with him. His quarterback his QBR, was about 69. That's 44th percentile. It's not great. I just didn't really see anything watching him that that blew me away. But what did you think?
Yeah, no, I was on the negative end of things. He does have some talent and some upside, kind of like a Carson Wentz, I guess. You'd think, like, no one you really get excited for, but he might have some flashes at times, but mainly it's going to be below average, I think. But I wasn't shocked to see him fall at the draft because, yeah, he doesn't have all the tools some of these other quarterbacks have. But he is a project, and I think that's the plan, right? Is they'll probably give him extensive run, in the preseason because they're probably evaluating him and the team for 2024 and beyond. So I think getting him as many reps as possible in the preseason makes a ton of sense because I don't know if he's NFL ready yet. So he's one of those guys that has all the skills you kind of like to have in a quarterback, but he hasn't put it together. So I'm more on the negative end with him. But again, like once we see him in the preseason, I think that's going to help see how, he's transitioning to the NFL. But I wasn't shocked to see him fall in the draft.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think the hype, and I could be wrong. It's tough to evaluate quarterbacks, but just from what I've seen, I don't. This is not a guy that strikes me as a guy that's going to beat out Tannehill. The Titans' last 4 games are Houston, Seattle, Houston, Jacksonville. So they're almost certainly not going to be out of the playoff picture with 2 games, 3 divisional games in the last 4, 2 against Houston. So yeah, I think, and Tannehill has gotten hurt. And what is he now?
35?
Yeah. So there's a chance that he gets hurt, and that's how Levis comes into some value. Yeah, it is his age 35 season, but yeah, barring that, just nothing really to me stood out what he did at Kentucky. He's a bigger guy, 6'4", about 230. You would think he would be really good deep passer, but his deep numbers in 2022 were well below average.
He can throw it far.
He could throw it far, but exactly, that's kind of the issue. Right. So, and yeah, he can move around a little bit. You know what I mean? It's not, he could definitely move, but again, there's just nothing that I'm really loving with Levis here. But
all right, where the hell are you going next?
Now it gets really dicey. Now it gets super dicey. So let me name some of the guys who are on the board here. Obviously, Thompson Robinson, who we talked about, was a 5th rounder out of UCLA. Clayton Tune was a 5th rounder out of Houston on the Cardinals. Thompson on the Browns, obviously. You got Stetson Bennett out of Georgia. He was a 4th round pick of the Rams. Aidan O'Connell, a 4th round pick of the Raiders, is on the board. Hendon Hooker's not going to play this year, it looks like, but he was a 3rd rounder out of Tennessee. And then you got some Jake Hayner was a 4th rounder, Fresno State, that went to the Saints. Jaron Hall, Vikings, 5th rounder from BYU. Tanner McKee on the Eagles. Sounds like he's having a good camp, 6th rounder out of Stanford. And Max Dugan, TCU, was a 7th rounder. He went to the Chargers. When I look at this list of guys and I say, okay, if we're talking redraft,
none.
Right. Well, so, Thompson Robinson, I think, is interesting because I think he could potentially jump Josh Dobbs and then, be that QB2 if something happens to Watson. Tune is interesting because we're hearing Colt McCoy might not be ready for week 1. So I think he's interesting. And then, the Packers released Danny Etling. So Clifford is definitely, it looks like he's going to be the backup to Jordan Love. O'Connell, I guess the upside with him would be Jimmy Garoppolo always gets hurt, but you got Hoyer in front of him. So I am going to have to I'm going to have to go with Tune because I think he has the best. He could make a week 1 or he could make a couple starts early in the year. I think that's and he can move around. He scrambled about just over 8% of the time in his career, just over 9% of the time in his final season in Houston in 2022, about 2,000 yards over and 15 touchdowns over his 5-year career in Houston. So, that's, give me a guy who can run around and might just start in week 1. So, and and we've talked about this, if the Cardinals are struggling, how soon, what do they do with Kyler Murray? Do they not bring him back as fast? Or if he is back, but he's not 100%, do they just kind of shut him down again? That also could lead to more starts later in the year for Tune. Because remember, the Cardinals are projected to have the worst record in the National Football League. So I don't see why you would start Colt McCoy in like week 15 if you're 2-12 or something like that. So yeah, I'm going to go Clayton Tune here, the 5th rounder out of Houston.
Yeah, no, I would have gone with him too because he's the one that has the clearest path to playing time. Like you said, they might have no choice and have to start in week 1 since Colt McCoy is hurt as well. So so he's the most likely one to get some starts, and more importantly, he has rushing upside. So if he does get starts, he can eke out some points. But yeah, he would have been the last guy that I'm projecting for more than a game started. But I'm going to have to get sneaky here. I'm going to go with Aidan O'Connell on the Raiders. He's their 4th round pick out of Purdue. I think he's sneaky here because there also is a path for him to getting playing time this year because, he's battling out Brian Hoyer to see who's going to back up Jimmy G this year. And as we know, Jimmy G is just never been able to stay healthy for a full season. He's already dealing with injuries, heading into the season. So there's a non-zero chance that Jimmy G will get injured this year and miss some games. And also, Jimmy G could struggle in this new offense. It could warrant a benching. Who knows? But there is a chance, there's a path for Aidan O'Connell to get some starts this year. And I think he's a pretty solid prospect. He started all 4 seasons at Purdue, so he has a ton of experience. He could be sort of like this year's Brock Purdy, I think, where he could surprise some people. I think he is polished enough to start games in the NFL. And he's on a team that they could be horrible this year. They could, by the end of the season, want to see what they have in O'Connell, even if Jimmy G's healthy. So there's at least paths for O'Connell to get playing time this year. And he's a 4th-round prospect. He's not bad. So I think out of all the remaining guys, he's probably the best bet to actually see starts this year.
Yeah, anytime you're talking, and because Jimmy G, not only does he struggle to play full seasons, but Brian Hoyer is just old, very old.
Yeah, what do you need to see Brian Hoyer for at this point?
Yeah, knowing Josh McDaniels, he's been with Hoyer for decades now. Hoyer will definitely get that first crack at the job. Yeah, right. But
Lord.
there's enough. Hoyer's an injury risk at this point in his career too. So, there's enough there, I think, with O'Connell to kind of warrant a look here. The only thing with him is he doesn't really move around that much. I think he's scrambled under 2% of the time, right?
He would have Purdue. To be like Brock Purdy level of efficient, and he doesn't have the benefit of being in a Kyle Shanahan offense surrounded by Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Brandon Ayuk. But all things considered, the remaining quarterbacks, he's the best bet at being that kind of diamond in the rough.
All right.
Who do you got?
So we got one more peek.
I know who you're going with here.
It's either DTR or Clifford. It's definitely one of those two guys. I loved what I saw out of DTR. I also feel like that's recency bias. But I'm going to go Clifford here because the only other quarterback on the roster besides him and Love is Alex McHugh. I think that's how you pronounce it. Who was he's a journeyman 2018 draft pick from Seattle, 7th round pick out of Seattle, went to FIU. But I think that, Jordan Love, the plan is for him to start no matter what. But if he goes down, I think you see what you have in Clifford here, who was a 5th round pick out of Penn State. Not really a big guy or anything like that, but does have above average measurables in terms of his speed. Ran a 40 in the 84th percentile. He does scramble enough, not a little more than average, so he can move around. And you look at this Packer team, and it's just a whole bunch of young guys all over the skill positions on offense. So it's another situation where I think if Love gets hurt, if anything like that happens, you're just gonna go with Clifford. And even maybe there's even a long shot chance that maybe Love is completely horrible for some. I don't think he will be horrible, but if he's horrible and the Packers just really bottom out this year, maybe you do look at Clifford in week 15, 16, 17, 18, one of those weeks. So just looking at this Packer depth chart, I got to go with Clifford here just because he's already the number 2 quarterback, and whereas DTR, good chance to beat out Dobbs, but Dobbs has been in Cleveland before, so there's a chance he doesn't. There's a chance he's kind of just a preseason star. So I'm gonna go with Clifford here.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. He just has a clearer path to playing time. But I think, God, considering between Stetson Bennett and DTR,
yeah.
Holy moly. I'm going to go with DTR, though.
Yes.
I just think that, he has an uphill battle. I think he absolutely has passed Kellen Mond to be at least the 3rd quarterback on the Browns depth chart. But like you said, I think he does have the upside to leapfrog Josh Dobbs. He's kind of who Josh Dobbs was 7 years ago when he entered the league, when he was a bit younger. Dobbs is a rushing type of quarterback. Now he's a bit older, doesn't have the same speed, but DTR, you saw it in the Hall of Fame game. He's got it. He was actually more impressive as a passer than I thought. So he at least has the upside to potentially backup Deshaun Watson. And again, he has that rushing upside. So if he does happen to get a spot start, he could put up some points. So we're really, grasping at straws down here. But I think DTR has, the rushing upside and sort of the path needed to be the last pick of this draft. I can't go Stetson Bennett. I just can't.
Yeah, let's talk about Stetson Bennett. Just for people that don't know. I mean, well, DTR, he was a baller at UCLA. Like I actually thought he was one of the better quarterbacks. One of the fastest guys in the draft at quarterback, a 4.5640. His QBR was just under 82, so that was very good as well. So he was a true dual threat, undersized guy.
They had to deal with him and Zach Charbonnet at the same time.
Yep.
Scary stuff.
Yeah, so I definitely like what I saw out of him. You could tell he has something in him, and he's probably going to be around. And like I think at this point probably has to make the active roster whether he's the QB2 or 3 because you're not sneaking him through the practice squad or anything like that.
Right.
But Bennett, he was drafted before pretty much all these other guys outside of the top 4 here and Hendon Hooker, but. Do you think he is the front runner for this backup job in year 1, or do you think it's going to be Brett Rippon, a guy who just has kind of been around a little more traditional quarterback? Because Bennett's way undersized. He's 5'11", under 200 pounds, and he's also on the older side, right? He's 26 this year.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on Bennett?
Yeah, I mean, well, the reason he went in the 4th round is just because the Rams probably reached for him. So at least they like him. So I think that, like if Matthew Stafford goes down, their season's probably lost anyway. What do you stand to gain by sending Brett Rippon out there? So I think they could throw Stetson Bennett out there just to see what he has. Because, again, he's always overachieved. Like, he was a walk-on at Georgia and led them to 2 national titles. So, that might warrant a look in the NFL. But like you said, I just think he's too undersized. I don't think he'll translate to the NFL pretty well, but, we've seen crazier things. So, again, the fact that the Rams spent 4th round draft capital on him means they do view him highly. So that's all that matters, right? So I think that he does have a legit chance to be Stafford's backup. And again, we're about to see, potentially see him in person in his first preseason game. If he plays well, I don't see why he couldn't, get the backup job. So he definitely has a path to become the backup, and then he's a Stafford injury away of getting starts.
Yeah, it's like I do like you going DTR over Bennett though, because when I look at DTR, I say, okay, if Deshaun Watson goes down, DTR can run the same offense, right? Whereas like if Stafford goes down, I feel like Rippon would be the one that could run that offense. Mm-hmm. Whereas like Bennett, you would have to change the offense a little more for him. So that I do like that, going in like a guy like DTR's favor over a guy like Bennett. And the size, I mean, it is kind of weird to have a guy, what is he, 5'11", 192. I mean, that is.
And old. That's like just sending me out there. I wouldn't do that.
Right, yeah. Let's just draft you with the last pick. Oh man, but and then Jake Haener. I mean, he's 4th round out of Fresno State, went to the Saints, but you still have Jameis on that team, and you still have obviously Carr is gonna get his got the big money. He's gonna get all the chances, but you also have Taysom. So I mean, this guy Haener, it's probably gonna be a redshirt year for him. Jaron Hall. I mean, he's Kirk Cousins doesn't miss games. McKee already's having a good camp, but you got Hurts, you got Mariota, so I mean, that's
brutal.
Yeah, that's great supporting cast. If he ever did happen to get get a start,
no shit,
it would be solid. But and then Dugan in LA.
Yeah, Dugan's interesting. He's an athlete. He would be a hell of a rushing quarterback, but I think he's considering, like, they might consider moving him to like wide receiver or something. Like, I don't know if he's gonna make it as a quarterback, so he's got to figure something out. And then Hendon Hooker, I was holding out hope that he might potentially be available at the end of the season, but the Teddy Bridgewater signing just leads me to think that they're saying we're keeping Hooker on ice for the it's going to be a redshirt season for him. I just thought the Bridgewater signing was the nail in the coffin on that.
Yeah, he's not playing. It doesn't sound like he's playing this year. But going back to Dugan, he actually is at least somewhat intriguing because, I mean, the only guy behind Herbert is Easton Stick, who has really never done much of anything to warrant being, this important of a backup. So, if somehow Dugan was able to get in there, I mean, the supporting cast is amazing in LA. So that's a guy who, if we were picking a couple more picks, I'd probably have to take him next.
Just take him in preseason DFS.
I shall.
Yeah,
I definitely will. I definitely
go
will.
off there, but yeah, that will be interesting. Maybe we'll see him this Saturday as well.
Yeah, Chargers Rams, baby.
Scout all these quarterbacks. Nice.
I mean, most quarterbacks are shitty. That play in the preseason.
That is true.
All right, let me recap this draft again. This is drafting for value above ADP for this season, so that's what makes it tough, especially after the first few picks. But I started with Bryce Young, QB 24. Then Sean went Anthony Richardson, QB 13. I went Stroud at QB 26. Sean went Will Levis at QB 34. Then I went Clayton Tune. He's undrafted, and he is a 5th rounder. I went to the Cardinals. Sean went Aidan O'Connell of the Raiders. Then I went Sean Clifford of the Packers, and Sean ended it with Dorian Thompson Robinson of the Browns. So that is going to wrap it up for our Fantasy Flex rookie quarterback fantasy preview for 2023. Our rookie running back and wide receiver episodes are already up, and those I think are a lot more useful because there's just a lot of guys that could potentially factor in at those two positions for this year. We will drop the tight end episode later on in the week next, so stay tuned for that. And you can find Sean on X at @_oddsmaker. I'm at Chris Raybon. We're at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app. And be sure to check out actionnetwork.com for our 2023 season-long fantasy rankings as well. Until next time, let's get this shmoney.